Hello, welcome back to the next lecture of our series of political science, and we are going to understand communitarian scholars one by one, starting with Alasdair MacIntyre. We understood what is communitarianism. We understood we understood what are the basic assumptions of communitarianism. What communitarian philosophy essentially talks about. It talks about situated self. It talks about justice not to be first virtue but as remedial virtue. It talks about state not to be neutral, state to side with the values which falls according to the conception of good of society. And they say that right is not prior to good, but right is rather constituted by good. Right? These are the basic assumptions that we have seen of communitarianism as a philosophy. Now going ahead, we'll start with the first philosopher of communitarianism, which is Alasdair MacIntyre. In his book, After Virtue, MacIntyre analyzes Western societies. Right? He analyzes Western societies and comes to a conclusion that even though Western societies are prosperous, are developing, are resourceful, but they are not happy. They are not happy, right? There are two words in English: prosper, and other word is flourish. Between prosper and flourish, there is a slight difference. Between prosperous and flourish, there is a slight difference. Slight difference is of happiness. You can prosper, you can grow because you are growing in resources, but such growth in resources does not correlate to happiness. Or better word can be eudaimonia, right? A general a general eudaimonia as given by Aristotle. A general happiness, general flourishing in the societies, in Western societies, was missing. They were prosperous, they were prospering, they were growing with respect to resources, but happiness was missing. Right? They had growth, they did not have happiness. They were prosperous, they were not flourishing. They lacked eudaimonia, they lacked happiness. In the question of why Western societies lack happiness, Alasdair MacIntyre observed that individualism is the cause. Individualism is the cause. So why as to Western societies are prospering but not flourishing? They are growing but they are not happy. So individualism was analyzed as culprit by MacIntyre. MacIntyre says that individualism is the issue with Western way of life, right? Western way of life. Individualism is the primary tenet, primary principle of Western liberal democracies, and this very principle was called as or was thought of as the the very principle of individualism was leading to Western societies towards what you call less social capital, what you call atomistic loneliness, what you call a loneliness pandemic, right? People are growing but they are not happy because of individualism, because of atomistic man. Why does MacIntyre think so? Because MacIntyre thinks like this. Because man is inherently social animal. Man is inherently social animal. We are like lions, we are not like tigers. We are like wolves, we are like dogs. We want to be in a society, we want to be in a family. So man is inherently a social animal. Man wants to be with a society, right? What he suggests that individualism kills this social animal within us. Individualism kills the social animal among us, and what happens because of that is that we become lonely and we lack general sense of happiness in our life. So what is the culprit according to MacIntyre? What is the culprit? It is individualism. Individualism, the primary principle of Western liberal democracy, is the primary concern of lack of happiness in Western liberal democracies, right? Because man is inherently social. Man is inherently social. So what MacIntyre is doing here is basically challenging what Western liberal democracies thinks to be good. What Western liberal democracies think to be good. They think autonomy of self is a good principle. They think liberty is a good principle. They think individualism and freedom of choice is a good principle, right? These are the principles which Western liberal democracies thinks to be good. And on these very principles, MacIntyre has issue, right? If your society is summation of individuals, then your society is aggregative, like Bentham society. But your greater than society is greater than sum of individuals, right? Very philosophical term is here that your society is greater than sum of individuals. What does it mean? That society is prior to individual, whole is prior to part. Society is more important than individual, right? So MacIntyre takes this view that society is more important than individual. For him, society is organic, right? So what is the basic idea? That MacIntyre says that if you go towards extreme individualism, what will happen with you? That you will become lonely. If you become lonely, then your social animal will die. If your social animal is not well fed, your social battery is not recharged again and again, then you will lack happiness in your life. Your life can be prosperous, but you will not flourish, right? So what solution he gives against excessive individualism? He says that we should realize community community worth to live life in fullest sense of term, right? So what MacIntyre essentially says is that however you personally do good individually, right? How your individual personality develops, it does not matter if you are not ready to be a valuable member of society. It does not matter if you become MD of, let's say, Microsoft, right? If you become MD of Microsoft, you have a three-story mansion, but you are the only person there that life is extremely lonely. That is basically the McIntyre is saying. It does not matter how individually well you are doing. Your value addition to the society, your community participation, and your social being matters more to for you to become happy. That is basically the idea of Alasdair MacIntyre, and that is basically the ideas he proposed in After Virtue. Basically, criticism of atomistic man, and he proposes that realize your worth and realize true happiness by realizing community worth. That is the basic idea as explained by Alasdair MacIntyre, right? Next, we are going to understand and we'll try to understand Charles Taylor. Charles Taylor and his book Philosophical Papers. Philosophical Papers. Now, not everything is important. Whatever Charles Taylor has written, right? Only one concept becomes very important with respect to political science. It is his concept of situated self. I have explained you situated self in the last lecture, but I will explain you again. Situated self will understand concept of situated self with respect to concept of atomistic man. Atomistic man. Exactly the opposite idea, right? Exactly the opposite idea. Situated self, if you are a situated self, you are a very lonely person. You are out of the society. You are without socio-economic abstractions. You are without history, you are without family, you are a person of your own. That is true, but but you have your own identity behind you, right? Atomistic man is basically the idea of autonomy of self. Atomistic man is basically the idea that says that man without socio-economic abstractions. This is the basic idea of atomistic man. Situated self, concept of situated self on the other hand is like this, right? Again and again I give example of Foucault. Like Foucault says that you are a discourse of the ideas which shaped you from childhood to the last breath you take. You are continuously exposed to the ideas and those ideas shape yourself, right? This idea that ideas shape you was taken by Charles Taylor in another context, right? He says that suppose this is person A and these are five or six different persons, right? Seven different persons around him. So what situated self basically is that A, our main actor, will interact with all of these people, right? When this interaction happen, when this interaction happen, the the our actor, the hero of our story, will be shaped in one ways or another, right? One ways or another. Most of the Indians are not exposed to other gender very early in their life. They go to colleges, they go to junior college, and they go to pretty late in high school to interact with opposite gender. Before interacting with opposite gender, you are a atomistic man with respect to gender. You don't know what and how other gender thinks. Once you get exposed to the other gender, You become friends with them, you get into relationship with them, and you try to understand their point of view. In that situation, in that situation, you become the other person. Your knowledge system is broken down. New knowledge system get takes place of it. Right? What this being and becoming cycle is called by Charles Taylor is situated self. It is basically the idea of moral reflection. You have one morality, someone else takes a mirror in front of you of their morality, and you try to understand yourself. You try to break it, and you don't try, but you subconsciously break and make new morals continuously. That is the idea of situated self. That yourself is constituted by the constant reflection, the constant interaction with others by process of moral reflection. That is the basic idea as given by Charles Taylor. This is idea of situated self, a very opposite idea to atomistic self. Right? This we have done. I hope this was easy to understand. We'll start with the next philosopher, Michael Sandel, from the next lecture. Thank you so much for bearing this lecture with me. Thank you so much. Bye.